Welcome back to another episode of the Shortsighted podcast. Today we're talking to Sheri, who has made improvements from -6 diopters to -3 diopters. So she's basically cut her diopter dependence in half. Amazing progress, and something that's really worth possibly listening to if you need some motivation and tricks and insights and ideas that come from making this much improvement in your myopia. Hope you enjoy this one. Here's Sheri.
Hi, my name is Sheri, and I am from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I'm a stay-at-home mom to 8 amazing kids. And my story starts, the first time I can remember wearing glasses was in 4th grade. Went to the optometrist. It was in 10th grade that I started wearing contacts, and from that point on, I wore contacts pretty exclusively through college and on through adulthood. And I got to wear, I pretty much wore them all day, and I would only wear my glasses at night, or, I wouldn't even be seen in public in my glasses because I hated glasses. And I didn't feel like I even was awake, or I didn't even feel like I was fully there in the mornings until I had my contacts in. And so a little bit more than 4 years ago, I had just gone to the optometrist. She had just upped my prescription from -5.75 to -6. And that's a contact prescription. So it was probably even a little bit higher with glasses. And I was just continually getting really discouraged that my prescription kept going up and kept going up. And it was depressing. And I was reading late one night. I was just reading, and I had this thought, I wonder what I could see if I took my glasses off, which doesn't sound like a big deal. Probably a lot of people do that, but being exclusively a contact lens wearer, I really didn't ever do that. I had my contacts in from the moment I woke up, and then I would wear my glasses at night. Like, you can only wear your contacts for a certain amount of time, like 8 to 10 hours. And so I would wear them as long as it was healthy. And then I put my glasses on, never took my glasses off. So took them off and just was looking at my book, and I realized that my book is like an inch or 2 inches from my nose. And it was just super depressing. And not only that, but I was reading cross-eyed. My stronger eye was reading, and my weaker eye was not even focusing, not even following the book. And it was just kind of one of those moments that just changed everything. It was really depressing for me. So I started Googling just like improving your eyesight. And then that, came up reversing myopia, which I looked up, and I didn't find Endmyopia right away. It actually took me a little bit of time to find it. Now this was more than 4 years ago. The first thing I found was Todd Becker's speech that he gave at Berkeley, where it's called a modern yet reversible myopia, a modern yet reversible disease. And I watched it through probably 2 or 3 times, and it had some similar characteristics to Endmyopia. Just the basic premise that close work is what's causing, the problem with nearsightedness. And so anyhow, I thought I would just give that a try. So I started changing some of my habits. I first of all went outside. I was outside a lot beforehand, but I was always walking, looking down. So I went outside and looked around and looked up and just really tried to look and focus on things. And then I also stopped wearing correction whenever I was doing close work. And I would just, I mean, it was really close to my face, but I was doing that. So, and I did feel like I was making some improvements, but I wanted to try to do a reduction. At that time, I didn't know that you could order your own prescription online. I found that through Endmyopia. I didn't know that. And I knew that my optometrist would not give me a lower prescription. I just knew that she wouldn't. So I did something that's super crazy, and I can't believe it actually worked, but it did work at the beginning. I just started, my left eye was negative 4.75. My right eye was negative 6. These are contact prescriptions. I just started wearing both 4.75s in both eyes, which I like thinking about it now, I still can't believe I did it. But I continued those habits that I had had and did that reduction for about 3 months. During the summer, I went back to my optometrist, and I had made a 3/4 diopter improvement in my weak eye and a 1/4 diopter improvement in my eye that was just wearing the prescription, but I had changed my habits. And that was just so encouraging to me that I just, in my head, I thought, this works. I have to find out more information about this. I have to figure this out. I know this works. And at the time, my optometrist, I asked her about it. I was kind of nervous, and I didn't know that much. So I didn't want to talk about it too much because she knew a lot more than I did at that point, and I didn't have a lot of research to like base anything on. But she pretty much just said, well, you know, you were probably overprescribed, and at some point you're going to come down and you're going to hit your real prescription, and that's where you'll stay. Which was, you know, I thought, well, maybe she's right. But it was after that visit that I went back to the internet, really searched, and I found Endmyopia, and everything just opened up. Like I got your 7-day email. I read them. I read everything on the website. I watched all the videos, which back 4 years ago, there weren't quite as many videos, but and just started really understanding how vision works. And you know, I continued my habits, but I changed, you know, even more, like getting differentials, and from that point on, I continued to make 1/4 diopter reductions regularly. And I am just so happy with my improvement. I am so happy with where I am now.
You're currently at -3, is that right?
If I'm wearing contacts, I can see 20/20, which my contacts I wear pretty strictly outside. I can see 20/20 on an indoor Snellen. But with my glasses, I'm at 3.25 with my weaker eye. So I'm assuming that's because the contacts are right on my eye, and it's so tempting to like come down since my contacts, I'm seeing 20/20, but I'm waiting till my glasses is, you know, 20/20 with 3.25.
And is it both eyes the same diopters now?
No, they have been about 3/4 diopter difference ever since I went to that optometrist. So I have continued to make progress. I did try to, before I learned about making several reductions before equalizing, I tried to initially equalize, and that I got actually behind and had to like catch up. So I'm attempting to equalize for the first time with my starting with my differentials, but I haven't quite come down with my normalized yet, like to bridge the gap between 3/4 diopter and a 1/2 diopter.
So where are you at now with the normalized left and right eye?
Negative 3.25 and negative 2.5 with my left.
Yeah, that's still decent though. It, you know all this stuff, but sometimes it makes sense. Like if the non-dominant or quote unquote weaker eye isn't when you get the new reductions, and it's either improving more slowly or just generally taking longer to get back to the same point, then equalizing generally won't work that well. It's not till the non-dominant eye or the weaker eye at some point just starts improving more quickly or at the same rate as the dominant eye, then you can try it. But what happens is you kind of lose some of the momentum in your spherical reductions when you do that. So if you're regularly improving just spherical, it's fine to keep that ratio for a while just to get, while you're still at, once you're getting into the like 2 diopter range and you start equalizing is also fine. But I guess what
Okay.
I'm saying is there's really not a huge hurry to do that unless you feel compelled to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm usually in general over anxious to equalize and to reduce, which I know is I know that a lot of people do that. And even knowing that, it's easy to still make that mistake just because, yeah, because, you want to keep coming down. And actually, that is a mistake that I made. I plateaued for over a year at 3.75, and it was with both eyes. It was really discouraging. I came down too fast. I was not measuring on a Snellen. I wasn't measuring with see, I was like skipping the rules, thinking that I could do it on my own. And and I knew, because I had read on the website, that if you come down too fast, you should just go back up. But I guess psychologically, to go back up just was like, oh, I can't do it. So I just hung out there, and it ended up being over a year, and I was obsessive about it. I probably was working way too hard. If I just would have gone back and continued making slow progress, it would have been better. But
that's kind of, there's some experiences you have to make on your own, right? Like I figured this out finally after a long time of going, why do people not listen, right? Because a lot of this is not just my experience, but has been replicated by so many people that we've tried. Like we always go try another thing, right? And just like you have, like everybody goes, well, maybe I can do it this way. And for the longest time, I'm like, why does nobody go, hey, if thousands of people have tried it, this is the quickest way? But I think at some point you have to do something just to show yourself that
yeah,
that's not going to be more helpful. And I
yeah,
completely empathize with that because I would have done the same thing. My first reduction was from a -5 to a -3. There was no guidance back then, but I know how you feel because I was like, if this is possible, I'm just jumping in and this is what's going to work. And if you overdo the stimulus, it's just strain, right? Because all of it is strain. Like basically when you have that blur horizon and you're challenging your eye, it's strenuous, but it's that strain that creates improvement. But if there's too much of that stimulus and it's more strain than stimulus, then you end up in this plateau place more likely. And it's less comfortable, and it's just, there's no real upside to assigning more value to the number than it's just a number and it just gives you a blur horizon distance. But then on
right.
the positive side, once you've had that experience, it's much easier to go, okay, this is the working way. I'm just going to follow it.
Yeah, definitely. And I made another mistake along those same lines. I didn't wear differentials for quite a while because I thought, do you really need differentials? Well, you do. because, and I mean, now looking back, it makes perfect sense to me. But at the time, I thought, well, I just won't wear my glasses and I'll just work on it that way. But when your prescription is so high and you're not, your eyes are seeing at different distances, then if you wear nothing at all, one eye can see this far away, the other eye can see this far away, and it doesn't work. And when you wear your differentials, it's like both of your eyes are being challenged at the appropriate distance, and it evens it out. And once I got my differentials, I started really noticing the centimeter changes. I mean, that was a huge turning point for me too. But yeah, I did a ton of things where it was like, oh, do I really, need to do that? And then I would get frustrated because I wasn't making improvements. But
I would
yeah,
do the same thing. I know if I was coming from the outside and reading all this stuff, I know I would do the same thing. So I can't blame you. I can't be mad at anybody because I'd be the same way. I'm like, I'm going to skip a few of these things and just focus on whatever. The one main thing is, that's totally normal. Problem with the no differentials with high myopia, besides when you have different focal planes, as you mentioned, is also convergence. Right? Like your eyes have to focus. The closer you get, the more your eyes have to turn inwards. So your extraocular muscles get more strained and you're running more of a risk of getting convergence issues. So
makes sense.
besides the strain, the closeness is also not ideal.
Yeah, 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 makes sense. Well, another thing that has been, and I really assume it's probably a huge barrier for a lot of your listeners, is contact lens. Because I had been wearing contacts since I was in 10th grade, and really they almost give you the illusion that you don't have a vision problem, because you put them in right away, you don't have anything on your face, and you have this crystal clear vision. And so when you go years and years and years like that, it almost feels like you don't really have a vision problem until your once a year visit that you go to the optometrist. And to be able, I know, and I've heard from other people and read from Endmyopia, I know that you have to slowly make that progression to contact or to glasses. But it wasn't like a once and, I can just, all right, now I'm going to wear glasses for me, because I had worn them for so long, and I hate glasses. I absolutely hate wearing them. I do not wear them in public unless I absolutely have to. So it wasn't like I could just break that tie so easily. Now I pretty strictly, for the most part, wear them, my contact lenses, only outside, or in public situations where I do wear them. But I know that to make progress, and I am a stay-at-home mom, so I am home or kind of with my kids a lot, I can wear my glasses most of the time, which is great.
And it's true, like contact lenses are good for some things, especially with high myopia. Buying glasses that have a similar optical quality as contact lenses gets really expensive. With contact lenses, you also get better peripheral vision. So especially when you're outside or in places where you use peripheral vision more, close up you don't, right? Close up you use 5% of your visual field because you're just staring at that point in front of you. No real point. But when you're outside, when you're in an environment where you take in more than just a fixed point, contact lenses can be very useful for that, because you get a nice field of vision, which can help with improvement. They're a lot more inexpensive than glasses. On the flip side, some glasses where, as what you were saying, is really useful to remind yourself that there is a crutch involved. Like there is something like psychologically that you're like, I want to get rid of these things that I stick on my face.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
But your glasses look nice. You have a very nice, like serious, studious thing going on.
Thanks. I wish I liked them, but hey, someday hopefully I'll be without them. So
Yeah, and you said you started 4 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and yeah, with all my mistakes and fumbles, yeah, I mean, I feel like I should be farther. I feel like I could be farther. I had two babies in that time and a lot of life changes. So, um, but you know what? Even with just, I guess you could say almost a half diopter a year, I'm just so happy with my vision. And from -6 to these glasses are -3.25, when I am not wearing my glasses, I feel like everything used to be just a blur. Like if I don't have them on, everything is a blur. If I don't have my glasses on now, I can walk around the house. Things are, kind of blurry. I can't read things, but I can see people's faces. I can function. And even just that is, a boost and encouraging to just feel like I'm wearing so much less prescription than what I was wearing.
Yeah, and the other thing is this, unlike what the optometrist said, all the things you've been doing to get you from -6 to -3 will continue to work all the way back to 2020. Like the stimulus is the same, the eye response is the same. As long as you maintain the habits and the reductions, you're going to make the same improvements. And I usually say it's like 3/4 of a diopter a year, so half, yeah, it's a little bit less, but it doesn't really matter because the next thing really isn't 2020. The next thing is 2 diopters, which 2 diopters is amazing. From 3 diopters to 2 diopters is fantastic because 2 diopters is right at that edge where you really don't need them for close-up anymore. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really exciting moment when you get to -2 also, which, a year-ish, thereabouts.
Yeah. I can't wait to get there. And my husband he for years has been at 225 and 275. He's always just kind of hung out there. And he hasn't tried any of the things that I've tried, but he told me that when I come down to his prescription and when I pass his prescription, that then he is going to try. So, but I don't really want him to get ahead of me. If I've worked on it this long, he can't get ahead of me. That would not be fair. Not cool.
Yeah, and the problem is you can't tell him because if he's at that correction, that first diopter, or if it's that low, even at least 0.75, he'll be able to go down pretty quickly. So
Pretty fast. Yeah. Yeah.
keep it a secret for a while.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, -2. So that's like a yearish thereabouts. And then from there, the last 2 diopters are the most exciting ones, I think, because especially when you came from -6, where everything was just complete blur, there's so much nuanced change, right? From -3 to -2, like your indoor vision is going to be noticeably more usable. And then the next half diopter to get to -1.5, then you really don't need differentials anymore. Around -1.5, there's no point. So the differential concept is just over. And from there, it's just little tweaks on the way to where you don't need glasses for more and more of your distance time too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. And I've listened to your podcast with other people that are at the last diopter, and I think, oh, I know how hard that's going to be. And, but also, like you said, you're not wearing them as often. You won't need to wear them as often inside, especially. So that's kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, and I don't think it's hard at all. I think it's a mindset thing because it's hard for people who are anxious to be rid of them. Whereas my take really is it becomes a game of if you're like at -1.5 or -1.25, you don't need them for certain things. Like if you're going for a walk outside, you're not driving a car, you're not riding a bike, you're in a familiar space, it's sunny, you don't wear -1.5s, your vision is largely fine, right? So then when you go indoors, you need them, or when you're driving, you need them, but it becomes a game of when do I still need these things? So while people express frustration, especially if they started out with low diopters, I think if you start out with high diopters, that last bit is kind of the most fun because you're getting closer and closer to where you need them less and less. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be the best bit of the
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. It's exciting. Well, another thing is our kids, back when we started, or, like 4 years ago, um, I was also, when I was questioning my vision, I was also questioning for my kids. If you look at our family history, and if myopia is genetic, as is believed by most people, then I'm nearsighted, my husband's nearsighted, my parents are nearsighted, my three siblings are nearsighted, and my husband, two of his three siblings are nearsighted. So the odds against our kids are just not really good. And I didn't want them to have that experience if really it doesn't have to be that way. And I feel very confident that my kids are not going to need to wear any correction. And I mean, they know my story. They hear me talk about it all the time, and we spend a ton of time outside. I have a Snellen chart in our kitchen. I try to take it down when we have company, but I keep it in the kitchen, and, randomly I will have the kids read, and, they're like, "Oh, Mom, really?" But they've always passed. And, I would be happy to take them to the optometrist if I felt like it was necessary, but they all have great vision. Like, they always have 20/20, 20/15. And I just feel really hopeful for them that this isn't going to be, that they're not going to have to wear correction, which I think is just a gift.
Switch the chart up sometimes without telling them, just to make sure they're not cheating.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Good point. I guess I should do that.
Also, and if you consider retail prices of glasses and 8 kids, you're saving a fortune by preventing this whole thing in the first place.
Oh yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely the cost with 8 kids is obviously pretty daunting. But even aside from the cost, I just really care about my kids' eyes. Like, if they don't need to wear glasses, I don't want them to have that experience. And just from my own personal experience, I know that they don't. So, so I hope that they, as they get older, our oldest is 15. So he's to the age where, he makes a lot of his own decisions. And, we've had a lot of really good screen practices, especially with our younger kids. We, are pretty conservative with how much screen time we have. We spend a ton of time outdoors. But as they get older, they do make their own choices. And, I just hope that he will continue to make good choices. And at the least, even if he would develop pseudomyopia, right? Is that right? He wouldn't need to have, he would know enough to not go and make it worse by getting glasses.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're instilling good habits. And even if I often tell parents this who have young kids who already wear glasses, is just knowing that you can stop the progression and you can reverse it at any time. Like, it's not what I keep saying, it's not a medical condition, there's nothing broken there. It just becomes a matter of, do you want to let it go to where you have to deal with it later? And unlike teeth that you end up having holes in, this is largely just a matter of now, unfortunately, you have to put in the time and do active focus and make reductions to get back to where you were before. So I think just instilling good habits in them and them knowing what's going on, I think, is most of the battle.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, we, especially with the kids, try to just, and I know you've said this on your website, but have a lot of hobbies for them and things for them to do outside. Because the whole screen thing is, I think it is really hard for kids, you know, all their friends are on screens. You can do gaming with friends. And, but if they have, you know, we're usually outside, we're often outside. And if they have things, you know, ripsticks, playground, you know, just all kinds of things for them to do. Fortunately, we just bought a farmette, so we have a pond they can go down, and you know, there's things to go outside and see. And I think having things out to do outside for kids is just a big deal to help to keep them busy, you know, so that they're not just always wanting to be on a screen and always drawn to it like a bug to a light, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also like preventing, and those are the bigger topics, like preventing screen addiction and just healthy behaviors. Like it breaks my heart sometimes because when I deal with, like, for example, I go visit friends in Hong Kong, and that city is so dense and so crowded and so not conducive to playing outside that it becomes almost like the default response to have a screen and to be interacting on a screen, versus maybe more so where you're at, where it's more going outside makes more sense, right? Like the environment is more friendly to doing something other than screens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I really do think if they have things to do outside and people to see, if everybody's outside and everybody's busy, you know, working on, you know, whatever, you know, but I think sports, our older boys are really into sports. And if all the neighborhood kids are over playing sports, they're outside. It's great, you know, it draws them out. And yeah.
And then if they have screen time, especially if it's not phones, right? Like if it is a laptop or an iPad or something that's at a reasonable distance, a whole lot better, right? Like even just preventing this distance is a big thing, especially if you're playing sports. You can get away with a fair amount of screen time as long as it's at a reasonable distance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just watched your video on the different screens to use. So every time I'm tempted to go on social media on my phone, I've been thinking, oh boy, I really should probably open up the laptop. So it's just little habits like that that you really, I think it's easy to not realize how much screen time that you know, you take in, and like you said, the type of screen, you know, it's habits. It really comes down to habits.
Just little tiny things, and they add up. And especially, I think your situation is the kind of place that if somebody is in that place, it's ideal. You've improved by 3 diopters already. You have all the habits down. You know exactly what you're doing. And from here, it's just a timeline, right? Like there's not a whole lot of new weird challenges involved. And just getting somebody from the place of not knowing what's going on at all to past the learning curve, right? Like the first month or so, there's a ton of stuff to figure out. And then you have to get used to changing your glasses, used to changing your habits, get past the making your own mistakes. And from then it's fairly simple, right? It's just that the beginning, there's a little bit of a learning curve to get to that point where you're at, where you've already made it through 3 diopters, and you will make it through the 3 that are left.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all there's to be said, I guess, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's exciting to me to think about, because there have been times where I just, and we had other things going on, and it's like I don't know if I have time for this. But then I realized I had already made those changes and those habits, and you can't really go back once you've seen the progress. And you just, even if you start developing bad habits again, and things didn't, when you've started to make progress, you really can't ever, when it would come time for me to, my glasses would break and I need to buy another one, or my contact prescription would run out, I'd have to order another one. There's no way I could ever go back up. I just couldn't, I couldn't do that. Just knowing how far I've come, I'd want to just, keep working and continuing in the progress for sure. So
We have to do like a once a year or once a diopter follow-up almost. I almost feel like I want the little stories of from -3 to 2020.
right, right,
-2,
yeah,
-1.
right. Yeah, because you're probably at really a lot of different points along the way. And yeah, just like I was when I, didn't do the differentials, and then finally did that and noticed a big difference, and wasn't measuring for a little while and realized that it's the fine print. Like, it's not just enough to be outside and to see, it's good to see and to make things clear outside, but it's that fine print that really tells you where you are. You may think you're outside, oh, I have 20/20, but you really have to measure it.
Yeah, it helps you keep yourself accountable, and you get, especially if things are slowing down or you run into a plateau, having those data points is really useful, right? Like if you go look back a year or two and I was doing great 2 years ago and now I'm not, it's much easier to revisit things when you have not subjective just context, but actual data that says I did great and now I'm not doing great. So you increase your accountability by measuring at least sometimes.
Yeah, it really does help to write it down. And I know I listened to Matt Ely's, one of his videos, or it may have been his podcast with you, and he talked about how he had written this whole projection of, I'm going to be at this spot by this time and this spot by this time, and he had it all written out. And I did that same thing, and you can't do that. You cannot do that. You have to stay where you are, wait till you get to 20/20, and then come down. You can't come down until you are seeing clearly. But I did the same thing. I made this projection, and I'm a pretty dedicated person. I'm just going to work hard, and I'm going to get to this spot by this point. And it doesn't work that way.
We're also finally started working on an iPhone app that uses the front-facing camera. Apparently now the way this thing works, it can actually measure the distance pretty accurately. So you can do your own centimeter measurements and diopter conversions just by looking at your phone and hitting a button. And it's going to save your progress and chart it out. And then do other stuff too, like link to the site and articles and stuff. Work just finally started. So the measuring part should be a lot easier in the future than it is now.
Oh, wow. So when will that be done, or is it done?
I would guess a couple of months for the first version to be out. It took a while. There's some test versions out that have been done by others that have actually worked. So I finally committed to hiring a developer and getting that on the list of things to do and pay for. I will post updates everywhere. The guy started recently, and I'm thinking probably a month-ish thereabouts to where the measuring app will be working and the logging will be working, so you can create an account, you can log in and keep track of changes. And then my long-term vision is to make that more part of everything, like how much you should be improving, and if you're not improving, how you can troubleshoot that stuff, and more things in one place, since so much of our users are on mobile devices anyway, and now the mobile devices are capable of helping that much. I feel like that'll be really useful to make that a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. That's like kind of taking what I'm already doing what several people are already doing and just making it easy. That's really cool.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. This and our chats, I think like all these things put together are going to be helpful, especially for somebody who's just starting out or wondering if it's actually possible.
Oh yeah, because that's really what helped me, getting on the Facebook group and connecting with people, seeing people's stories. And you have a ton more interviews with people now than even when I first looked like 4 years ago. And just seeing people's stories really, and from, all over the place, all different stories. It's encouraging. And with the podcast, it's great because I can turn it on in the kitchen and I can listen while I'm cooking, or even if I'm outside. It's not like I have to be watching something to listen. I can just listen, and it's really great.
Yeah, more of that, hopefully. Working on more of that.
Yeah.
It never ends. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Really, 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 really do. And maybe we can. I'll email you again, or email me again in a year or so. We'll see if we connect, see if we want to do a follow-up.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Jake, and I really appreciate all that you've done and put on. Just your website. Everything I have done has been at no cost, except for the cost of my glasses, which has been a lot because I have so many of them. But it's been life-changing for me, and I am getting to 2020. I'm so excited about it. But even just pausing right here where I am and not being where I was I'm just so happy with my eyesight. I'm so happy with where I am and just thankful. So thank you.
And that was Sheri. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. That's amazing. Cutting your myopia in half. She's also distracted by plenty of other things, so there's really no excuses to not be making these improvements. Remember, this is all a matter of habits. Once you have the right habits down, the improvements are basically more or less continuous. And if you run into trouble, there's a whole troubleshooting playlist on our YouTube channel. There's a troubleshooting thingy thing in our Facebook group. There's obviously a forum that has lots of discussion that helps with making all that progress. We're working on a wiki for Endmyopia, working on an app that'll be able to measure your eyesight, measure your diopters, keep track of your diopters, and log your improvements. All of this is coming. Tons of stuff going on. So if you're working on improving your eyesight, realize that I'm continuing to work to make as many community tools available to you as possible, including this podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Talk to you in the next one.
Meow, 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 meow.